Hey guys, so finally got a little bit of a break from the rain here in California, and so I wanted to get outside here for a few minutes, get out from the shop, and no time for a woods walk today, but uh, my little tree house here will work just fine. So I wanted to maybe take a second and tie together these last few videos that I did. So what we were talking about was using our senses when we're outside and movement in the woods, our walking and our walking techniques and that kind of thing. And maybe talk about, just for a second, give a few ideas of why it matters. Um, so first of all, kind of an obvious one, and one I've mentioned, is kind of that nature connection thing. And when we enhance and we start to practice enhancing our senses and being in tune with where we are and what we're doing, and what's going on around us, um, we start to notice more. And so let's take foraging for an example. Um, if I'm just kind of blasting through the woods, just hiking with a purpose, um, like I do sometimes when I'm out just trying to get some exercise, right? So I'm moving a little bit quicker and that kind of thing. Um, trying to get some exercise, then there's a lot of things that I just go right by and I don't notice. If I'm using my senses more, I'm going to notice more plants. I'm going to notice and be in tune to the changes in those plants from day to day, from week to week, to month, and of course the seasonal patterns. Everything in nature is kind of a circle, and it goes around throughout the seasons. And but and even when I can't get in the woods, I go out to my backyard here and I look at the plants, and I notice day to day even um, some of the changes in what they look like over the seasons. So what does stinging nettle look like first thing in the spring? What does it look like middle of summer? What does it look like end of summer? And then I can start to understand what are the plants, what is it useful for in different seasons and that kind of thing. How can that be a resource? But being in tune with those changes is, and noticing them in the first place, being slow and quiet enough to notice them in the first place is one of the keys to foraging. And then also tasting, sight. So what do they look like? What do plants taste like? What do they smell like? And that kind of thing. So in practicing those different senses as it relates to foraging. Animal patterns. So I find that when I take a moment and I go and find a sit spot and I just kind of lean against a tree and relax, after about 10 or 15 minutes the forest really comes alive. If I'm not kind of tromping around camp or whatever, and just being still. It's amazing everything that goes on. And then you can take and implement your all eyes and being still, just kind of keeping your eyes still like we talked about, and noticing everything going on up into your periphery here, and also the sounds and the directions that the sounds are coming from, gauging direction and distance and that kind of thing. But really, boy, this is something I've been practicing a lot lately, is just sitting still and taking 15 minutes to sit and be still and practice these things. A side effect is that the critters and everything become used to you, so they just start going about their normal business around you. And it's really a different thing when you take the time to do that. So walking, think about, just like I said, when you're sitting still for a while and the woods come alive and the animals get used to you. When you're walking through an area, it can be pretty quiet sometimes. Even the birds scatter off into the distance, so you don't hear as much birdsong. Other critters are kind of hunkered down. What's going to alert you to pass the animals around them more? A deer walking through, or the stealth movements of a bobcat, right? What's going to set them off more? And as my squirrel story that I related in the other video, that that squirrel alerted on a house cat coming through back here way before I ever saw it. And in fact, I only saw it because I sat still and used my kind of, still eyes, owl eyes concept. And then I finally noticed the movement way, way off. But I couldn't hear it, I couldn't smell it or anything like that. But somehow these critters knew. And so compare that to you or me, we're moving through the woods. They know we're coming from miles away. But that squirrel was all upset because of this cat, right? So it recognized the cat's style of moving, the cat's way of being in the woods. Now if a deer came walking through, that squirrel wouldn't have cared. So, and the deer's louder, so that's something else to think about in the way we move. And that could help relate to hunting too. So for hunting and outdoors and all these things, using, having access to all these things and practicing these things, it starts to also get us in tune with everything that's going on around us, and we start to understand the patterns of what plants and animals do throughout the day or over. So when we take time to put together these patterns and use our senses to understand and start to relate to the world around us, we become better at foraging, we become better at maybe hunting, or becoming familiar with the patterns of the animals, and think of how that might really help with tracking. Tracking is a whole lot more than just seeing animal prints, and maybe that's something we'll talk about in the future, but when we hear what's going on around us, and we see, and we take a minute to take in visually the bigger picture, maybe some smells that are going on, we get to be better trackers. So, yep, this stuff isn't going to help you carve a better feather stick, but it helps in many other areas. So I hope you really take the time to go back and watch some of those videos, and just take a few minutes of your time out in the woods and start practicing these things, and start to see how maybe it changes your relationship with, and how you attune yourself to the woods, and kind of how we comport ourselves to our natural environment, and just see what happens. Spend some time doing that. Take a month or two, and every time you go out, or twice a week, go out in your backyard if you have some space like that, a nearby park that can be quiet sometimes, and try this stuff out, see what happens. And I'd love to hear back from you, so if you want to leave comments, shoot me an email, anything like that. I'd love to hear how this stuff, what it does for you, if anything. It might be nothing for you, but I'm going to bet that it might change some perceptions just a little bit for you, at least. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I'm going to keep doing some more of these kinds of things, hopefully. And spring is starting to sprung here in California, and the rains have slowed down a little bit, so hopefully I can get out a little bit more and make some more of these videos. So anyway, thanks for watching, and catch you next time.